Hi everyone, it's Jan from Leadapreneur. So what I've decided to do is try and create a daily guide for one thing that I think is really impacting Industry 4.0. As most of you probably are aware, the World Economic Forum coined this term the fourth industrial revolution. It's the transition into a cybernetic world and world in which digital and physical are integrated. Uber is a great example of Industry 4.0. They don't own any cars and yet are one of the world's largest transportation companies. So it's this ability to blend the digital and physical realities that we experience that is really a key characteristic of Industry 4.0. But really, as with every great industrial revolution, it's not just about the technology per se, it's about understanding how the entire reality that we're familiar with is changing. And so what I'd like to do is work towards being your guide for Industry 4.0 and cover as many diverse topics that I think are relevant to this transition because it's a time of extraordinary opportunity and also remarkable challenges and difficulties as well. And so this is where we're going to kick off our first guide to sort of thought of the day on Industry 4.0. And it's on a news article I posted earlier in which the first train that has left from the UK, and guess where its destination is? China. And so think about this. There is a train that will leave, has left London and will arrive on the east coast in China in about 10 days' time. Now doesn't seem like that big a deal, right? I mean, what's on this train? Apparently whiskey, vitamins, lots of normal stuff for normal people. But let's think about the flow of trade, right? Because for all of Industry 3.0, the globalization era that we grew up in, basically after World War II, trade was meant to go the other way, right? China was meant to make goods and then ship them to the West where they would be consumed. And so that's where really a lot of the values lay in the West, right? Because all the design and higher value work and consumption lay essentially in the Western economies. And now we're seeing a reversal of this trade flow, that we are moving in the world that has already globalized. There's no point talking about globalization anymore because it's obviously happened. In a global economy, the trade flows are going the other way. Now, this is, I think, a really symbolic moment to identify a key shift in Industry 4.0, which is that power is moving away from the West, basically. As other powers rise, we're not necessarily going to see great power conflict, although we might, but it's more about realizing there's a multipolar world with different actors trying to pursue different agendas. And so it's no longer this world in which the West rules. That world is dead, it is gone. And instead we're seeing a rise of different powers, and China is obviously one of them. Because China's great project, certainly for this half of the 21st century, is what's called the One Belt, One Road initiative. And it's basically trying to recreate the old Silk Road trade routes of history. And so basically what this means, what China's trying to do, and by trying, I mean they're already investing billions and billions and billions of dollars, ultimately trillions of dollars into this project, is to build infrastructure networks, physical in terms of rail and road, but also virtual in terms of money flows and things like that. And it's basically building this web that will essentially capture most of the world's markets. So what this means is that China is building railroads into Southeast Asia. China is building ports across the Indian Ocean. It is building rail networks through Central Asia. And this is one of the key enablers of that train that is traveling from London to China. Furthermore, they're investing in Africa and also in trade links in Southern Europe as well. So basically what you need to do is get a world map and look at all those countries. What is really going on here? China is integrating the economies of Europe, Russia, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, as well as the Indian subcontinent and ASEAN, into its own mega economy. And by 2022, within the next 5 years, something also very important is going to happen, which is that China will very likely overtake the United States as the largest and most important economy in the world. And it will probably continue to accelerate and rise very, very fast. And so what this means is that the One Belt, One Road initiative is not just a get-rich scheme. It's actually a strategic objective of China to deal with the other great power in the world, namely the United States, because the brilliance of this move is very simple. America rules the waves, right? America secures its power through the dominance of its navy, which secures global shipping routes. This is a fundamental platform of American power. But America also has two giant oceans, right, on either side of it, the Pacific and the Atlantic. Now, historically, they have been there to defend America. It's very hard to invade America across an entire ocean, or indeed across the Arctic. But what China is trying to do is actually turn those oceans into a disadvantage, because America is also very far away from everyone. And so if you can isolate America by instead tying everyone's economies into your economy, using rail, road, and seaport strategy, then suddenly America is isolated. America is vulnerable. America is not able to compete with China, and that allows China the ability to pursue its agenda. I don't think it's necessarily about saying that one power wants to win or not. It's just about protecting your interests and being able to work to secure them. And so really what's really important here to understand is that this represents a fundamental geopolitical game that we're seeing, China versus the United States. And it's a very smart strategy because it's avoiding direct military conflict, and it's instead using the power of economics, trade, and intercultural relationships, something that Chinese have historically been very good at, to build China and secure its growth. So there's also, for example, huge advantages. The China's port in Pakistan is able to cut out the ability to bring oil through Southeast Asia. So now you can ship oil directly from Pakistan into Western China and then across into the eastern provinces. So what does this mean for us in our Industry 4.0 world? What it means is that at the most basic level, the assumptions that many of us have grown up with, the West rules, America is number one, the East is just playing some kind of catch-up game. That world is done, in my opinion. It's finished. It's old. And we need to upgrade our worldview to realizing that China today is leading in many fields. For example, I believe 3 or 4 of the world's top 10 phone manufacturers are actually Chinese. Huawei, Oppo, and Vivo. And if you haven't heard of any of those, that's probably because most of the growth is happening in Asia, not in Europe or America. So the summary of the thought of today is that Industry 4.0 is much more than just a digital revolution. It's a revolution of humanity, of how we organize ourselves, how we think of ourselves. And I think that it's not necessarily a threat. It's a huge opportunity as well. There's a lot of good that can come out of this. So my challenge for you today is, how are you embracing your worldview of Industry 4.0? Are you seeing this as a rising opportunity or as a growing threat? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for your time.